Writer and director. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a couple of special guests. If you will allow me to introduce Mr. Jeremy Allen White. And our moderator this evening is one of my all-time favorite actors. To have both Kit Carruthers and Captain Willard in my presence from someone who has entertained me since I was a child. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Martin Sheen. Woo! I'll just quickly say, this is how this event happened. I don't really know Mr. Sheen or
Martin,
or Emilio, and I had a phone message from his son Emilio, who said, "Hey, Scott Cooper, this is Emilio Estevez. I've just seen Springsteen, and I have someone who wants to say hello." Not knowing, of course, that it was going to be Martin Sheen, who, of course, is in the film, and one of the reasons that Bruce Springsteen made the album Nebraska. And then to have him leave me a voicemail was, such a beautiful voicemail, was a true highlight.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You might think of me as maybe like a substitute teacher. It's like I'm familiar with the subject, but I'm meeting the students for the first time. So I've been asked to play host, as it were. So if any of you have any questions, feel free. There's a small enough audience here, we can get a microphone to you, because you've just seen the film, and so your emotional life is still vibrant, and your memories of what these two gentlemen so brilliantly presented is fresh. So please feel free. We'll talk for a little while, and then I'll throw it to you, and I'll come around with the mic if you're cool with that. Or is there another mic in the house somewhere?
I'm sure we can
No?
probably
Okay,
track
we'll get to you, but feel free to do that. I just hope that the people that ask questions are a little closer to the front, but never mind. Okay, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm such a fan. And we were just talking. We met for the very first time just a little while ago, while we were having a little supper, and I'm so inadequate at doing this, because I'm such a huge fan of both of your work, and I didn't realize that I saw Crazy Heart. I didn't realize he's an Academy Award winner, and so many other films that you're familiar with. And of course, we know this gentleman from The Bear long before the Springsteen. But then tonight I just learned that he was in one of my favorite series, Shameless, and that he was in one of my favorite scenes where he attacked a guy who was trying to rob him with a gun. So, Jeremy and Scott, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. And
truly.
If I'll probably just ask the basic question going in is how. I'll do it in a Shakespearean kind of. How came you to this product?
Well, yeah, it's very famously, Bruce Springsteen has said no to the telling of any of his life stories, and he has many of them, as a movie. He said no since, I think, 1986, and my producers, Ellen Goldsmith Vane and Eric Robinson, reached out to me, and they said, just through an email, they said, "Scott, are you a fan of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska?" And I knew them only socially very little, and I wrote back, "Who isn't? I think it's one of the finest albums of the last 50 years." And that began a conversation that they had the rights, or were getting the rights to, the book Deliver Me From Nowhere, a very beautiful telling of Bruce Springsteen's The Making of Nebraska. We met. I then met Warren Zanes, the writer. Warren Zanes and I flew to New Jersey. Bruce Springsteen and John Landau, his manager, played by Jeremy Strong, who wishes that he could be here, but just like Jeremy, is just finishing shooting an Aaron Sorkin movie and couldn't make it. West Wing, the new Social Reckoning, Jeremy, it all comes together. So I flew to meet Bruce in New Jersey and John and
I assume you were a big fan of his long before you met him.
well, of course, and in particular that album, Nebraska,
Yeah.
that my father had introduced me to, Bruce Springsteen through Nebraska, and I dedicated the film to my father, who passed away the day before we started shooting the movie. So his spirit kind of carried me through. You know, and Bruce is a real cinephile. John Landau was not only Rolling Stone's first music critic, he was also a film critic. Bruce loves films, as you see, from Badlands and Night of the Hunter, and he'd seen all of my films, and a few of them, several times. And we didn't even really talk about, for the first hour or so, about why I was there. We were talking about movies, we were talking about children, we were talking about politics, life, everything that is so kind of au courant. And then he said, "Why this story?" And I told him, I said, "Look, we're all touched by mental illness. We all have very challenging familial relations. Some people more than others. And now that I've taken the movie kind of around festivals and around the world, I see how universal that is." And I said, I think as an artist, seeing the art of creativity is not something that you often see in movies. Yeah. And a man who is defying expectations of becoming or continuing on the ascent of stardom like Bruce was, to defy that and say, "I now want to tell a story that I'm compelled to tell," which is facing my childhood trauma, writing Nebraska, and essentially making a record that certainly his record company didn't want. Wasn't even sure if his fan base wanted. It was his least best-selling album of all time, but it was his most personal and enduring. And I thought, well, I can tell that story. And I knew that I wanted Jeremy from the moment that I decided to tell this particular story, because Jeremy not only is one of the best actors of his generation, but he can play the vulnerability that I wanted. He can play Bruce's intensity. He's really great, a great nonverbal actor. I mean, he's great with dialogue too, of course. But I tend to try to strip as much dialogue away from my movies as possible. What I didn't know was that Jeremy could sing as well as he does.
Yeah, we did some singing.
Yes. But Bruce Springsteen's songs are not easy to sing.
No.
I mean, in particular, Born in the USA, which Jeremy can tell you is probably Bruce's most difficult song to sing.
Yeah, both the Borns I had a hard time with.
Yeah.
Born to Run, Born in the USA. Those were tough. And I remember his phrasing too. I mean, Nebraska, there weren't a lot of chords on the guitar, and I learned the guitar, and so I felt like I had some help there. And it's not really, belting too much on the album Nebraska, but the way that he writes always, but specifically on that record, I remember the phrasing so difficult to get, kind of
because he didn't think he was making an album.
Exactly.
He's just writing it and reading it and singing.
Yeah, it's like free thought that ended up.
So it's very
on the
difficult.
record. Yeah.
Did Bruce, before you started the project, did he have approval of who would play him, or even his mother and father?
No, but
he trusted your choice.
Yeah, but because look, I was an actor with an unremarkable career when I first started, and I adore actors. I take great pride in casting and working with a certain type of actor that has a very rich interior life. And I knew Jeremy had that. And Bruce said, "Who you thinking about for playing me?" And I said, "Have you seen this kid in The Bear?" And he was watching the show, and he's like, "Oh my God, he's amazing." And Jeremy moves like Bruce. He has that same kind of working class, blue collar physicality. He has Bruce's humility, and I've said this many times, but Jeremy has something that they don't teach at the Actors Studio or Juilliard, and that's swagger. Right? And Bruce has that, and he's like, "Scott, I think he's probably the only person who can play him." And Jeremy also, if you look at images of Bruce in '81 and '82, it's a very striking similarity, physical to bone structure. So much so that Patti Scialfa said when she met Jeremy, she's like, "My God, It's like when I first met Bruce.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know Bruce. I mean, Scott and I
into
got
hip-hop.
together. Well, I was into hip hop, yeah, when I was a kid. But when Scott and I first got together, we were just talking about movies and actors we liked, and a lot of actors that Scott had worked with, and Scott's films. And he didn't bring up Springsteen once. It was just kind of a lunch, and a good lunch. And I just said, I hope we get the opportunity to work together. And then several months after that, I think it was Andrew, my agent, asked me to listen to the album Nebraska. And I said, well, I've heard that record, but it's been a long time. And I listened to it, and then I thought I knew where we were headed, but I didn't know, I don't remember if he had said, like, it was connected to the meeting with Scott. And then Scott called me, and, I was like jumping at the opportunity to do anything with Scott, but I knew how heavy that commitment was, to playing someone like Bruce, who's so well known, and everybody has sort of like their idea of this man and their understanding of this man, and I felt like I was really, stepping out on a ledge to sort of portray him, and I wanted to make sure I was the right person. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I think there's some actors that are like, I'll anything. I'm right for everything. I can do whatever it is, and I don't think that's true. I think some people are right for the right job, and I wanted to make sure I was the right guy. But then Scott had told me Bruce was like, well, Bruce wants you to do it, and I was like, why didn't you tell me that in the first time? What are we doing?
What was your first meeting with him like?
With Bruce?
Yeah.
I met Bruce Springsteen in London at Wembley. It was right before a show, and I was invited to go to sound check. So I was at an empty Wembley in the pit, kind of on my own, watching him and the band. And I had already had this kind of anxiety, but then seeing him and his band perform even at a sound check, there's such like a ferocity and a passion, and I was like, oh man, I'll have to do something like this at some point. But the sound check ended, and he found me, and he grabbed my hand and pulled me up on stage, and our first 15 minutes talking was center stage at an empty Wembley. And similar to, Scott and Bruce's first meeting, right off the bat, I think I was talking about my kids, he was talking about his grandkids, and then we went back to his dressing room, and I asked him a bit more about the film and why this period, and why do you want us to make this film about this time and this record, and more specifically, I asked him about what was going on that road trip, with him and his friend Matt D'Elia, when he has that sort of panic, and I'm like, I understand this is a panic attack, but what was really going on with you? If you could share, please, And he said, I felt like I was an observer in my own life. I felt so outside of myself, and I could never find a real presence in my life unless I was on stage or I was in the recording studio, and I felt so scared for my future and my ability as a partner going forward, if I was going to be able to be a father going forward. I just couldn't find that presence in life. And that was something I was kind of, looking for things to tether us. And it's a hard thing to do as a young man, to go, well, how am I like Bruce Springsteen? And that was the first thing where I went, oh, I'm familiar with that fear. I know what doubt feels like, and I know what that fear and searching for presence in life can feel like. And so I grabbed onto that. But he's been so wonderful throughout. Very generous in every sense of the word. And
was he ever on the set when you were actually playing? What was that like? You had to be a little intimidated.
Incredibly. I mean, yeah. He was on set very often. He was on set almost every day. So
He had nothing better to do.
He was actually touring.
Well, he was touring at the time.
Exactly.
Fly home at night and
Yeah.
be at set at 9:30.
Yeah, he would show up. He would show up on time, and
Couldn't shake it.
yeah. Well, the first week it was that thing where we'd spent a fair amount of time beforehand and really gotten along, and I'd asked the questions I'd had and kind of committed to my idea. But then when I realized I was going to be showing him that idea in real time, yeah, I got very nervous and very worried, and I felt like I was going to be judged or picked apart, or like I'd done something wrong, or I wasn't gonna. I desperately wanted his approval, of course, and I was worried I wasn't gonna be able to get that. And then after a week or two, you know, his presence was to be a support to Scott, to myself, to everyone, and to really just be a guide. There was no judgment. His presence was really one of permission, and it feels strange now, thinking back, like if he hadn't been there, you know, if he was down the road, 45 minutes, an hour or so. He shot so much of it close to where he lives in New Jersey, and it would have been strange. It would have felt like we were doing something wrong. It would have felt like we were doing something behind his back. And I'm glad he was there as much as
I mean,
he
look,
was.
I can understand what Jeremy White and Jeremy Strong felt in terms of, wow, are Bruce and John scrutinizing us? Which they never were. I mean, Bruce would hardly even say anything on set. He would just sit next to me, and I think it was incredibly therapeutic for Bruce because this is such a painful chapter in his life because we recreated his life with such specificity. For him, it felt almost cathartic in a way. And there were a couple of moments where he would say, you know, I don't think I can be here today. It's a little too uncomfortable. And he would leave, or he would.
Do you remember what those moments were?
Moments when Bruce is experiencing suicide ideation here in Los Angeles, when he just arrives and he calls John Landau at night, which was the lowest time in his life, and he said, you know, Scott, I'm not feeling so great. I think I'm going to leave. Some of the moments with young Bruce and his father, played by Stephen Graham. Those moments were tough for Bruce. Generally, he would just kind of hang at craft service, sit with me, and I would ask him about those particular moments. For me, it was really about, if you look at his autobiography, Born to Run, every chapter is incredibly lengthy, but the chapter on the making of Nebraska is only 1 or 1.5 pages long. And I said, why is that? And he said, because it's just too painful for me to, relive that. Which is ironic that he would then allow me to make this film, and that he would then come to set every day. Bruce has now seen the film, I think 13 times.
Wow.
And loves it more every time he sees it. I still speak with him or FaceTime with him every day. I mean, he's, it will, likely be the only film ever made about Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And, when you go into making a film about someone who's such an icon, people have ownership over Bruce because he's so beloved.
Yeah.
And then of course this genre, the musical genre, biopic, even though this isn't a biopic, people have ideas about what that will be when you've had such successful movies as Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man or some of those big kind of spectacle-driven extravaganzas. Right out of the gate, half the people probably aren't going to want to see a story about Bruce Springsteen confronting his childhood trauma and mental illness. But this is the story that I wanted to tell. It's the only story Bruce would ever allow to be told. And the fact that Bruce loves it as much as he does in John Landau means essentially everything to me.
Yeah. So Jeremy, you had to start from scratch with the guitar and the harmonica.
Yeah.
How did that process go? Did you have a teacher, or was Bruce helpful to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, I don't know if Bruce knew how much I was preparing with all that stuff. I don't know what he thought was going on in the prep there. I mean, I had a couple great teachers. I mean, that's the only way to learn these things and that quickly. I had a vocal coach, Eric Vitro, who works a lot with real singers and performers, and J.D. Simo, who's a wonderful guitarist, musician out of Nashville. And I got together with both of them about like 4 to 6 times a week for those 6 months that I had, and it was just really one of those things. It was, I was worked up about it and I was anxious about it, but it was really just one of those will things. I just went, you are capable, you can learn this thing, and it was repetition, and it was time. But I remember getting together with JD for the first time and telling him, I'm so excited to learn how to play the guitar. And he said, "You're not going to learn how to play the guitar. We don't have enough time for that. We're going to teach you how to play these 4 Bruce Springsteen songs." So there's no, I do not know how to play the guitar. Every time I pick it up, I start playing Mansion. I mean, there's no way around it. But it was daunting. But I mean, it's one of the best parts of this job. You know, you get to learn from such masters, and you get to pick up these skills as best you can. Yeah.
You still play?
I play Mansion a lot. Yeah, no, I do. I pick it up. So Bruce also, I'm very lucky. I mean, after our first meeting in London, we spent some time together before the show and after the show. And I got home to Los Angeles, and I got a call from someone who worked with him saying, "Bruce would like to send something to your house." And I said, "Yeah, wonderful." Gave my address, and then he said, "You have to be there when it arrives." And I said, "Okay." And a 1955 Gibson J200 guitar showed up. He recorded on a 1954, and the 1955 was the closest he could find to the guitar he recorded Nebraska on. So I've got this beautiful guitar. So I feel like I have to pick it up every once in a while because it's too pretty to just sit there.
Wow. There are a few moments in the film, and I'm sure that some of our audience are as curious as I am to have an explanation about. I asked you both backstage, and I asked you if it was okay if I brought it up now. The one moment in the film, I wasn't sure whether the actor, that brilliant actor playing
Stephen
Graham, in his final scene with you, he said, "Come sit on my lap." I wasn't sure whether the actor was improvising because the look on your face was like, not sure how this is supposed to work, Yeah. But I learned from, well, please tell us about how that moment came about.
Yeah, well, it's that actually happened to Bruce, and as we see from the film, he had an incredibly complicated relationship with his father. And he said this publicly. His father never, even to this day, or his father's long past, never told Bruce that he loved him. And he had never sat on his father's lap. He said, "So I've just finished this benefit show after I've started therapy, and I come back and I see Mom and backstage as we see, and I said, 'Where's Pops?' And she said, he's inside." And he's like, "Oh, okay, let's go sit with him." She goes, "No, he actually wants to have a moment alone." And Bruce said, I was like, "Oh boy, really? Okay." So he says, I go in, and here's my father just sitting on a chair in this cinder block room. And he said, I walked in, as you see Jeremy do it, somewhat trepidatiously and still keeping that distance. And his father just simply, as you see it, he said, come sit on my lap." Jeremy says, "No. Come on. Dad, I'm 32 years old. I'm soaking wet, as a defense mechanism." And when you're writing that, that's one of those scenes that you see coming up on the caution. You think, oh boy, you really have to get this right, because Bruce explained it to me as being an awkward moment, slightly humorous, because of the fact that the scene, once he sits on his lap, he never gets up. And he said, but it was probably the most tender and moving moment of my life. The first real connection I have with my father. I'm 32 years old, and I realize that my father has been suffering with schizophrenia, that he didn't want this in his life, that it's inherited. And he said, I didn't want to get up. And that's why I leave them in that position. And then when you have actors as good as Jeremy and Stephen Graham, what you do is try to shoot it as simply as possible. You try to, you try to get out of the way. And at this point, it was towards the end of shooting. In fact, that was, probably one of the hardest days of my life. That was the day that my wife and I got the, kind of devastating news that, like so many people here, our house had burned in the Palisades fire. And we shot that and the Born to Run, the big concert sequence in the opening of the movie. And I was almost having like an out-of-body experience, and was incredibly emotional. And I wasn't sure if what I was seeing was just the fact that I was so raw and had lost everything in my life, and my kids had, my wife, and that almost feels like a little bit of divine intervention, because when you get a scene like that, and it's so beautifully and tenderly and performed with such restraint, it's rare. And Bruce was there that day, and John Landau. And I remember I didn't call cut on one of the masters, and I looked over at Bruce, and he was crying, and so was John Landau. And I found myself the same way, and I thought, my God, this is one of those special scenes. And all credit to Jeremy and Stephen Graham.
And the other moment that I mentioned to you, and I asked if you would just share actually the last scene image in the film where you're asked what brings you here, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
And the courage to hold on you for that length of time in a close-up, but the pressure on you as an actor.
Yeah.
First of all, I have to just ask you, how many takes did you do?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, that was definitely again one of those scenes that was marked on the calendar. That one needed to work, and Scott had scripted it a couple different ways. I mean, there was no big back and forth, but there were a couple versions where I had a bit more to say or something to say to the therapist. But I guess what I knew always, and what Scott knew always, is there just had to be a relief. I don't think the form was that important necessarily to either of us. It was just, you needed to be able to see that, kind of see him releasing and losing it in some way, but also seeing that he's moving in the right direction, But I don't think we did that scene many times. I mean, maybe I just blacked out, but I don't.
I don't
didn't do
really
it a
shoot
lot,
many
right?
takes, and what you see here is Jeremy is the first take.
Wow.
Jeremy, exactly what happened? John Landau that night. Bruce calls him and he says, "Listen, I don't think I can keep going, John." And John thought that might be the last time he ever speaks to Bruce. And he said, "Bruce, whatever you do, don't do anything until you hear from me." And the next morning, he has an appointment for Bruce here in Los Angeles. Bruce walks in, sits across from the therapist, and he just starts crying. Doesn't even say anything. And I felt that was the right tone for the piece. But what's so brilliant about what Jeremy does is that there's a moment where he talks about release. But there's a moment where he almost laughs before he starts crying, and it's to play that duality comes from a very rich emotional life. That's something else you don't learn in acting school. That comes from a lot of self-examination and experience, and it's just so incredibly beautiful because, like you said, I just held on him.
Yeah.
I knew that I wasn't going to cut back to the therapist.
Well, as a fellow actor, I know those moments. It's often said that sometimes we shoot the wrong scene on the right day, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Where were you emotionally, if you don't mind my asking? Because I know it was something deeply personal. As actors, we know that if it's not personal, it's impersonal.
Yeah.
When it's impersonal, who cares? But clearly that is absolutely brilliantly done, but it was such a deeply personal expression. Would it be offensive if I asked you personally, what did you conjure up that evoked that?
I think, I mean, what I connected with really early on, another thing with Bruce, and what kind of carried me and was my kind of emotional center place throughout filming was, I'd spent an evening with Bruce and Patty at their house before filming, and Bruce is so in love with Patty, and Patty with him, and they were taking me around the house and telling me stories of how they'd met, and I was so taken aback by their love and admiration for one another. And I remember leaving their home after spending this great evening and looking at Bruce and really telling him, you figured it out. This is it. All of this stuff was for this. And so when I was doing the movie, the way I saw it was a sort of fight for a family that hasn't been realized yet. And so I think what my fear was, or Bruce's fear was, what brought him to that place, into that therapist's office, was, what if I never get these things? What if I never feel entirely whole. Jeremy, what if I lost these things? You know, what if I never had these things to begin with? And then I think wanting to have also a sense of feeling like I was in the right place, and there's such a, this is like a first step, but you know the feeling in that room is safe and it's good. He went on to speak to that therapist, his therapist that he saw for the first time for 25 years. He spent with that therapist. And so I think there had to be something there too, where there was like a comfort and an ease. He had to know that he was on the right track, but there was also something to shed to get started, I guess, you know.
Wow. Do you two have a plan to do another project together? I know you're working with Aaron Sorkin as
I
we
am
speak.
now, but I'd love to, yeah.
Oh, I hope so. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm always writing. I've got something in mind for us.
Does he know about it?
No, maybe. I keep my cards pretty close to the vest.
You're from Brooklyn.
That's
I just
right.
learned that tonight.
Yeah.
But you had a preparatory kind of background for show business. You had a voice. You took voice in high school performing arts. Did you?
Yeah.
So you were familiar with singing.
Well, no. I mean, I had, I guess, like, I had vocal training and stuff, but it was a more, like, an acting technique sort of class. But yeah, we would have movement and vocal and stuff like that. But, you know, I went to, a great performing arts school in Hell's Kitchen in New York.
What's it called?
Professional performing arts school. It was kind of for kids who, I didn't work very much in high school, but there were some kids that did, and there was a lot of Broadway kids. And
did you do any musicals?
Never a musical. No, I never sang. I never sang before this. Yeah.
You never had aspirations to do a musical?
No, I was too afraid to sing.
How do you feel about it now?
Well, I'm proud of what I, of what I did in the film. But I can't say that I'm like jumping. Oh, thanks. But I can't say I'm jumping to go sing again either.
What is your favorite musical?
Well, I mean, I don't think I was always engaged with sort of like more straight plays when I was young. Although I'll watch Singing in the Rain like any day.
All right.
Yeah.
I from the reaction of the audience, I think everybody would love to see you do a musical.
I'd like to get on stage, absolutely. Yeah. I feel very lucky too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you guys want to share, or how are we getting time-wise? I'm
No, I
pretending
think
I haven't watched, but I actually
Feels
do.
like we've covered it, and it feels nice. Yeah.
Does anyone in the audience have anything that they're dying to ask you? You're so close. Would you come, please?
I can talk loud. We're in Brooklyn.
I grew up around Red Hook.
Red Hook.
Canarsie.
Oh, right on.
Okay. First of all, amazing. I mean, everybody's going to say that, so.
Just tell us who you are, please.
My name is Deborah. I have a question that I noticed about the Faye character. Sorry, my question isn't about you, but you covered it.
Sorry, you have my mic.
The Faye character, was that a real person that Bruce was dating at the time? Did she have a child, or was it an accumulation of different stories of his women?
Faye is a composite of a couple of women that Bruce was seeing at the time, and she's what she's most meant to represent is that which is what happened was that Bruce was unable to really have a relationship with a partner, even though he knew that this particular woman was perfect for him. She's a loving mother, she's empathetic, she's fun, she's incredibly supportive. She was a real Jersey girl. All the sort of things that Bruce was looking for, but until he was able to do the kind of therapeutic work that he ended up doing, was he able to really give himself over to a partner, which he's now done with Patti Scialfa for 30 or 40 years. But yeah, so Faye was a compilation of a couple of women.
Now I noticed that she gave him that medallion, and then later in the end of the film, he was wearing it. Is there a significance to that?
Well, I think he felt that probably it was meant to continue to keep him on his journey. Even though they severed that relationship at Frank's Diner in Asbury Park. Bruce still has a St. Christopher. He also gave one to Jeremy.
Yeah, yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean, I think the movie was about, just as much as it is about Bruce Springsteen, it's about kind of all these protectors and angels, you know, in his life. And while things didn't work with Faye, she certainly was.
Yeah.
Was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you like Odessa, who played Faye?
Everybody was fantastic. I mean,
Condos?
Mark Maron even.
Yeah, Mark.
I noticed everybody.
Oh, good.
And Paul Walter Hauser. I mean,
Yes.
he
Fabulous.
always nails it.
Yes, he
Everybody
sure
was
does.
great.
Yeah, does anybody else have a question? Yes, hello.
Oh, you got one?
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi there. I'd like to, of course, acknowledge the emotional depth of the film, but I'm going to ask a little bit of a more lighthearted question. Jeremy, you mentioned the guitar that was gifted to you by Mr. Springsteen. You know, he is known for a very iconic look. I'm very curious if there were any elements of the wardrobe or the character's look in general, you know, the tight jeans, the rolled up sleeves, that really helped you feel like you were embodying Mr. Springsteen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were lucky. We had, you know, a lot of footage and photos to sort of get started on all the wardrobe with, and I think there was a certain like posturing that happens almost a little naturally when you're wearing things that form fitted and you know, the boots. I remember being very, you know, I think I wore those boots every day really, and we had like little insoles put in to like put my give me a little more height and be a little closer to Bruce's height, and that kind of changed my my posture and how I held my shoulders. And I found the wardrobe and costuming to be very helpful in some accessibility.
And one of the things I said to Jeremy is, listen, we're not making a film about Bruce Springsteen. We are making a film about a man who is confronting his past, his childhood trauma, who is facing this reckoning, who just happens to be Bruce Springsteen. I said, you don't have to look just like him. This is not about mimicry or imitation. It's about finding the emotional truth and the essence of Bruce Springsteen. I said, but when you sing Born to Run and Born in the USA, I hope you sing like Bruce Springsteen.
Is there anyone else that has a question?
Yes, ma'am.
You-
Just a quick story. My sister and I, we used to sing in a band in Ventura with these talented three brothers, and it wasn't.
Hang on. Tell us who you are, please.
Hi, my name is Marissa. I used to sing in a band with my sister with these three talented brothers from the Ventura, Ojai, Oxnard area, and they still to this day have a recording studio. And it wasn't until our friend's service, you know, friends were coming up to the mic and telling stories, and I was shocked. We were shocked because we never heard it before. That Ernie, he was like the lead guitarist. He actually performed with Bruce when he was younger, and his amp blew out. So he asked Bruce, "Hey, could I? Oh my God, the amp blew out. Could I use your amp?" And Bruce was like, "No."
So that doesn't sound like the Bruce I know.
I think it's because like it was like his personal, you know,